The deaths have been referred to the coroner. A Ministry of Justice spokeswoman confirmed yesterday that the case is still active. Meanwhile, the mock Tudor house has been listed for auction. Jacob Lowry, the younger brother of Tisha, referred to Somerville as scum. "You don't deserve to be on this earth," Miss Lowry's sister, Leanne Hodder, said. "I hate you with so much of myself that the hate I feel has interfered with the rest of my life." In the High Court in Christchurch this morning, Judge Lester Chisholm said he had taken the sexual nature and level of depravity into account when considering the sentence and the immeasurable harm he caused the victim's family and their communities. At the time of his arrest last year, Somerville told police he had killed both women in the same manner. They had both been strangled. Each woman had a pair of his wife's underwear stuffed in their mouths, and he went on to have sexual intercourse with each of the women after they had been killed. Somerville's non-parole period is significantly shorter than that for William Bell, who in 2003 was sentenced to the longest minimum non-parole period in New Zealand history, 33 years. Later, reduced to 30 years on appeal. He killed 3 people at the Empt Wellington Panmure Returned Services Association in December 2001. After sentencing on the steps of the courthouse, Tisha Lowry's mother, Tanya, said, "It's the end of the justice system as far as Jason Somerville is concerned. He's been sentenced to jail, but it's not the end for our family, and we'd just like to get our lives back to as normal as possible as a family now." Immediately afterwards, a spokesman for Rebecca Chamberlain's family said, "I'd just like to say, on behalf of Rebecca's family, we're pleased with the sentence that has been given to Jason, as we just ask he gets the assistance he requires to carry on through life." Rebecca Chamberlain's father, Clayton Chamberlain, who lives in Australia, had a statement read out saying, "I really miss Rebecca and feel lost without her in my life." Mrs. Somerville's father, Clayton Chamberlain, who lives in Australia, had a statement read out saying, "I really miss Rebecca and feel lost without her in my life." Mrs. Somerville was described as a troubled lady, but the family said they would miss her company, her singing, and her beautiful, giggling laugh. One family member read out a poem Mrs. Somerville had written in 2001 entitled, "I Am Not a Mistake." Crown Prosecutor Brent Stanaway described the sex as a depraved and sickening act. Somerville clearly posed a danger to the community, and it was clear there was no remorse or empathy with the victims. Rebecca Chamberlain was described as a troubled lady, but the family said they would miss her company, her singing, and her beautiful, giggling laugh. Wearing blue jeans and a fresh gray shirt, Somerville sat in the dock listening as members of both victims' families read impact statements. Occasionally, he hung his head, but for the most part, he sat expressionless, looking in the direction of each speaker. His acts in having sex with both the dead women were described as callous and depraved at his sentencing today in the High Court at Christchurch by Justice Lester Chisholm, the Christchurch Court News website reported. Because he was charged only with murder, his offending did not allow an open-ended preventive detention sentence to be imposed as well as a life sentence. But because of the life sentence and the facts of the case, he may never be released from custody by the parole board. Miss Lowry's mother, Tanya Lowry, said outside the courthouse that it had been a very hard day for the family, and it was the end of the justice system as far as Somerville was concerned. "We just want to get our lives back as soon as possible." The uncle of Rebecca Somerville, Peter Clifford Marsh, said the family was pleased with the sentence. "We ask that he gets the assistance he requires to carry on through life." Somerville, who has just turned 34, killed the women about 11 months apart. He apparently strangled Miss Lowry when she came to his house and refused to leave, and he killed his wife when she refused sex. In both cases, the strangulation was followed by underwear being forced into their throats, sexual intercourse, and burial beneath the house. 9 members of both families read out victim impact statements in court, recounting their grief and the effects of the loss of loved family members. They spoke of love for Miss Lowry, disrupted sleep, lack of concentration, and hate of Somerville. Jacob Lowry, the younger brother of Tisha, referred to Somerville as scum. "You don't deserve to be on this earth." Right from his early days, there has been a worrying trend of strangulation being part of his response to situations that were not of his liking or stressful to him, Mr. Ruth said. Justice Chisholm said the deaths of 28-year-old Miss Laurie and 35-year-old Mrs. Somerville had been devastating for the families and had caused irreplaceable loss. He said he found it absolutely incomprehensible that Somerville showed no remorse or empathy for the victims. The sexual aspect of the offending could offer a significant indication of future risk. The judge allowed a 3-year reduction in the sentence for Somerville's guilty pleas. Somerville remained impassive all through the sentencing, though he sometimes frowned and looked puzzled when technical legal aspects were discussed. Somerville remained impassive all through the sentencing, though he sometimes frowned and looked puzzled when technical legal aspects were discussed. It has been 10 years since Jason Paul Somerville murdered 2 women and buried them beneath his Christchurch home. The case shocked New Zealand and became one of the most infamous crimes in modern history. It came to light when Somerville called police to report his wife Rebecca missing. He said she'd gone to church that day and simply not come home. He was sentenced to life in prison and must serve 23 years behind bars before he is eligible for parole. A Moment in Crime is written and hosted by Anna Leask, senior crime reporter for The Herald. The podcast is produced by Chris Tarpey. Francis Cook is the executive producer. Leask has been covering crime and justice for The Herald for more than a decade and has reported on most of the major incidents and events over that time. Each month, I'll take you inside some of our most infamous incidents, notorious offenders, and behind the scenes of high-profile trials and events to show you what's really happening in your backyard. Heroes and villains battle for justice to be done, and it seems no matter how horrifying the story, we always want to know more. If you want to know more about the cases that have shocked and shaped our nation, from murders and massacres to violent villains and the utterly unbelievable, the 2 were still reportedly trying to get their children back. While in the Garden City, the couple worked with a family court advocate, Peter Burns, who was attempting to help them get their 2 daughters and son back. Peter told the Sunday Star-Times on the 13th of September 2009 for the article, "He was always jittery, an anxious person that Jason was always rather odd, but he took quite a shine to Rebecca. There were 10 applications we had before the court, and she wrote them all. They were just brilliant. You would think that a lawyer wrote them. She was very intelligent. She had cleaned herself up and just wanted to be a mom. She had battled through a rough patch and come out the other side. Was the voice in the relationship, and was very quiet. He was a wee bit overpowering at times." The couple attended the Linwood Baptist Church, where Jason's aunt, Jillian Somerville, was a pastor. Jillian told the Sunday Star-Times for the same article, "They were happy together. You would often see them walking around the streets. They would be holding hands." Thursday, 25th of September, 2008. 11 a.m. 28-year-old Tisha Lowry leaves the Bower Tavern in the Christchurch suburb of New Brighton, wearing a Chicago Bulls jacket and jeans after spending time there with her grandfather. She begins to walk to her grandfather's house on Hampshire Street in the Christchurch suburb of Aranui, where she had been calling home for some time, a 400-kilometer journey southwest. Tisha was living with her grandfather reportedly to have a little bit of space from her 48-year-old boyfriend. Tisha crossed the Avon River and into the suburb of Aranui. She continued along Wainoni Road and made her way onto Hampshire Street. However, Tisha was not at the property when her grandfather came home later that day. Stranger still, her handbag and cell phone were still at the house. The next day, Friday the 26th of September 2008, was her grandfather's birthday, but Tisha did not attend the gathering. Something her mother, Tanya Lowry, thought was quite concerning. Nevertheless, it would seem that her family believed Tisha was spending time with her boyfriend. On Saturday, the 27th of September 2008, the family was contacted by Tisha's boyfriend, who informed them he had not seen or heard from her since Thursday. Nobody had. Tisha's family contacted the police and reported her as a missing person.